Welcome.
The Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community is a regulatory science initiative that aims to facilitate innovations in pathology, as well as advance safety and effectiveness evaluation. The PIcc Collaborative Community aims to harmonize approaches to speed delivery to patients through collaboration in the pre-competitive space. The PIcc is open to all stakeholders, public or private, including but not limited to academia, industry, healthcare providers, patients, and advocacy groups. Meetings of this kind are an example of lawful activity under federal antitrust law, because the focus of the meeting is on government action or policy, including the industry's responses or positions taken with respect thereto. However, antitrust monitoring is needed for companies' own protection, since they are direct competitors meeting together. These meetings need to stay within protected subject matters and need to be monitored so that they do not stray off into inappropriate areas, such as pricing and price terms, sales and service territories for particular products, customers and customer territories, each company's individual decisions regarding selection of suppliers or customers, marketing plans and especially future marketing plans or new product offerings, other proprietary or competitively sensitive information. Today's meeting will follow the written agenda, and there will be no discussion of pricing or other prohibited topics. If the discussion veers into those topics, we will terminate the discussion. If you have any questions or concerns about the propriety of a discussion, please raise it immediately, and we will take a break to determine how best to proceed. The Medical Device Innovation Consortium acts as the formal convener, and we will follow their conflict of interest policy. For additional information, we defer to our Code of Conduct and our website, www.pathologyinnovationcc.org. We look forward to moving the field forward.
Okay, let's get started. Welcome back in 2024. This is the first steering committee of the Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community, or PIcc for short. And I'm very happy that you could all make it. And for those who will join later or will look at this later on, this will, of course, be on the website. We have a packed agenda, and I will start with a few regulatory updates. Then we have a few house items, and both of these presentations that you should see here on screen will be, of course, shared with everyone after the meeting. I think we're waiting for our colleagues from the agency, but I still wanted to start with sort of an update regarding some of the FDA changes and or guidances. Hello. Question? No? Okay. So first update, which is a continuation of a release that is related to some of the planned oversight of LDTs by the FDA, where several statements, releases, and documents that we're sharing here. So first of all, in January 18th, there was this a joint statement made by CDRH, which is, of course, the Devices or Center for Devices Radiological Health, as well as a representative from CMS that expressed alignment regarding the statement that's shown here. And of course, that is all tied to an earlier docket entry that illustrates that, the FD&C Act should be extended by a few words. That also gives the FDA expressed oversight over IVDs when manufactured in the laboratory. Now, in terms of information, there was a lot of interest to discuss what's happening. As you know, very likely this will go into effect in April, and what happens until then is all vagaries, but there's a few facts out there, and we wanted to share these. So one is that when you go onto the link that I believe Noor has pasted in the chat, you will find additional information on LDT, and there was a webinar around this rule proposal. And within that webinar, there's a document that shows the entire transcript, as well as some of the additional resources, and those are updated, as well as some of the docket elements related to this. This is roughly speaking the overview. One element that might be very helpful to some of you, and we will not discuss the position portrayed, but a very comprehensive, I think, over 70-page detailed encounter that is, aside from a final sort of recommendation, fairly neutral, was submitted, I think, by ACLA. The president, Susan van Meter, has signed it, and of course, on behalf of the entire association, but it provides a very detailed encounter. So while there were hundreds, I think actually over 1,000 comments on this in the docket, I thought of pointing this out briefly in case you want to get a quick overview of what the position is. A next element here related to some of the changes coming from the agency is a finalization of a rule related to quality management systems. And when quickly looking over this, the concept of good manufacturing practice related to a quality management system is, of course, fairly succinct. And you see that the rule went into effect earlier this month. And when looking over some of these concepts, for those who work in this space, of course, these seem familiar.
Hey, Joe, that document says 2026.
Yeah, sorry. What I meant is that this was released, but this is the final. Yes, correct. It's not yet in effect fully, but it's available, and I think it was released earlier, and I think it was actually end of January. But yes, you're right. This is not live and binding yet, so this is in transition period. So some of these concepts here might be fairly succinct to those who work in this space regarding, let's say, ISO certification or good clinical or good laboratory management practices. But the most important part is that these concepts align what the FDA thinks on quality management system with international standards. And here's that February 2024 element. I think it's the 2-year transition period that's starting here. The interesting thing about this is, of course, quality management system has been one of the key elements in terms of review, especially when it comes to high complexity tests or devices. And so I believe that those are probably important components to the field. There was another specific sub-guidance document regarding real-world data. I know that was one of the topics that many of the members here in PIcc were very interested in. So the original RWE program is, I think, from 2018. And here this guidance document is specifically regarding the assessment of registries. You see some of the key bullet points that are expressed in this. And this is for drug and biological products. Nonetheless, when thinking about devices and our data related to, let's say, diagnostic applications, I believe some of these guiding principles might be applicable. And so we thought of sharing this briefly. And then the final update and/or summary, which is also very interesting, is the new drug therapy approvals 2023 summary document. And when looking into the registry, you see some of these specific pathways like fast track, breakthrough, priority, but also some of the, PDUFA goals and, first cycle approvals. And you see the expedited development and review pathway might also hopefully will be a prelude in what we will see in the devices side, because if those work on the drug side, I believe that there will be some synergies here. I see Brandon and some of the team have joined, and I wanted to briefly, before continuing here, to switch to some of our, let's call them house items. And this is something that we could call in prelude of what we have done last year in terms of our annual meeting, but also what we will do this year. So I wanted to briefly take a moment to share this, of course, with the steering committee, but also with the entire membership, just for those who are not too familiar and what we can learn or have learned from last year. So briefly, if we recap the format of the PIcc 23 meeting last year, First of all, MDIC, Noor and Jitesh, who are our conveners here, are present today. So thanks again for the help with organization and everything. And if we try to summarize the meeting, there was sort of a dual functionality. So first, there was a traditional scientific meeting with, planning, a schedule, with talks, with panel discussions. You see here a panel related to, innovation in diagnostics. And that event actually happened. And then, I show you what the outcome was, and you may have seen some of the output on the website. But in addition, we had sort of an interactive component where prior to the meeting, during the planning, we selected certain topics, and those topics were scheduled within the meeting. And we had sort of interactive sessions where people were discussing these topics, voted on them to ultimately vote in the end for one topic related to real-world evidence and creation of data sets from the practice as sort of the topic with the highest interest from the group. And so I just wanted to briefly outline this, that formed the basis towards, let's say, the fall of last year of what the community was working on collaboratively. Now, if we follow up from this event, which is on the website, so we can tick off some boxes here, the topic itself, meaning what we selected and what we're working on, we took with those that were interested sort of to the next levels. And I wanted to provide sort of an update to the steering committee, what happened. So first of all, as those of you who participated in the steering committees, you know that the foundation of the NIH joined us for several conversations, presented their scope of their biomarker consortium, as well as the Cancer Steering Committee. And in August, a plan was made that we would present in November actually, to the Cancer Steering Committee from the foundation of the NIH. So we planned this throughout October. And then here you see a little picture, with Brandon and, some of the other members. So it's Alex Kaloff from ADAS, Kim Glenman, who's on the call right now from Yale. Hello, Kim. There's Laura Lassiter, etc. We don't have to go through the names. I show you all of those later. But we presented this, and then there were multiple follow-up meetings about what we can present as an actual proposal for a potential medical device development tool, or MDDT, possibly with a proposal as well as a qualification phase. And here's just a quick pointer. We probably, if you're interested, we can invite you to a follow-up call to continue planning this. So in other words, if you chain these two slides together, we had an annual meeting as an event, as well as a selection of topics that we took further towards a project. And if you look at what happened in the meantime, of course, we had planned a multi-stakeholder presentation. Friends of Cancer Research participated, and in the meantime published a paper on the relevance of digital pathology and drug development. And here you see some of the representatives together. I think we make a powerful combination of stakeholders to push things forward. Unfortunately, CAP was not able to join for scheduling reasons, but they have also expressed interest to join this group to put together a proposal. Now, this proposal would be, let's just call it an FNIH project, would be one of the outcomes that we can push forward. And just to give you sort of a little teaser, so if you want to join, again, please send us an email to the usual email and we will invite you. But so this is a logical continuation of this work as presented. We want to focus on data and towards using the data as a tool. Of course, the next step would be that we need to do milestone definitions, meaning protocol development, possibly a publication on some preliminary experience that Brandon has or would share. We can discuss the qualification phase, the data collection phase, etc. And again, we look for additional stakeholders and people who are interested. So please do email us. And maybe I just open it up quickly to Brandon and Kim if you have additional points and or comments regarding this cascade of meetings and events. I know, Kim.
The goal of the project, Joe, is to develop a tool for in relation to what for medical devices? Is it specifically scanners or?
It would very likely be something, I'm just using this as an example. We haven't set that in stone. For example, the HTT project worked on tumor infiltrating lymphocytes in breast cancer. It would be to create a real world data set according to a regulatory ready protocol, to have the data set as a tool, for example, to evaluate AI algorithms on that tool.
Okay, so this is related to what Brandon and I have been talking about. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I put there a logical continuation of our work. You know, if someone says we should absolutely do mitotic figures and everyone agrees, you know, this is not set in stone, but it would follow the same regulatory concept, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if I could add, you know,
Absolutely.
when we went to the FNIH, the pitch there was about a pipeline of real world data that could be used as evidence to support performance of an AI model. And we went in showing the things that everybody was working on that directly relate to that, thinking that the FNIH would either love it and ask us to follow through, and then maybe even direct us on what use cases they were interested in. When we finally had a follow-up meeting with FNIH, it was clear there was lots of interest from their membership. I think we had a list of more than 15 organizations that said, yeah, we need to do something in digital pathology. The thing that those guys talked about was really interesting. They understand that data is what unlocks AI, but they didn't know exactly what they wanted to do. The use case was still a real, you know, they weren't ready to say, this is the use case I want. And so when we had a follow-up meeting with the FNIH biomarkers consortium chair and other project manager, they said, you know what, you guys should scope a project that you kind of already have in mind. And for me, the HTT project is sitting there that, you know, at least close to a deliverable of some kind. And then the discussion really revolved around, okay, write 3 pages scoping that out. And we identified together that maybe pitching it in 2 phases. One phase is really low cost effort of creating the protocol and demonstrating that some people have experience, and we even have some data to demonstrate kind of the ideas, and that we would then meet with other members of the FNIH Biomarkers Consortium to see how well that landed on their desks and whether they wanted to tweak it. So to start a little bit slow with the scope of the project, but to really give them something we already know some of us want to do. One of them, that sums is me. But to then approach it in 2 phases, you know, first, or actually 3 phases. Number 1 is getting those members on board and consensus on a scope of a project. Number 2, to submit a proposal to the MDDT program that would receive feedback from the FDA, so that the proposal would be like what the FDA would find worthy to review and turn into an actual tool. And then the third piece would be the actual data collection. That would be the high cost, high value, you know, final phase. And from my desk, you know, in order to be as public as possible with the feedback from the FDA, I need somebody to be the submitter of record of that, because my FDA colleagues are uncomfortable with me publicizing their feedback to an FDA employee, versus once it goes to an external organization, they can do whatever they want with that feedback, including publish it, which is my kind of end goal, so that the community really here's a proposal for what a data set should look like to validate AI, and then receive the FDA feedback on that proposal so that everybody can learn about what are the expectations for data as which is the key component in any submission of an AI. You know, what data was used to validate and evaluate performance. So that's what I'm remembering in this moment. And so reporting back here is kind of an opportunity to see if anyone else wants to be part of those discussions as we create this first 3-pager and then start having meetings with the members. Some of your organizations might actually be members on this consortium. So we should probably share that list of memberships so people can see if because sometimes people don't know whether their organization is a group member or not. And but then reach out if you're interested in following through. And, you know, big picture, kind of big words is pipeline of real world data to create validation data. If there's anything you remember from what I just said. Yeah, the letters real world data is kind of the uncurated, unpolished, right out of the patient record. And real world evidence is when you summarize and characterize over the clinical population so that it is useful in validating and giving all the evidence needed. So that's the difference between real world data and real world evidence.
It's a good tongue twister, right?
It is not as easy as you think.
Thanks for the summary. So I don't know, at least for now, while it might actually be an MDDT project, we at least refer to this as the FNIH project, etc. So again, call to action is if you would like to join this already fairly co-creative and collaborative group, please email us and we will make sure that you get an invitation to the next FNIH project call. Now, as you know, we are tasked once a year to host an annual meeting. And while it's February and we have some time, I wanted to throw out a few ideas for the PIcc 24 meeting. First, we of course need to coordinate a time and date and location, etc., and discuss sponsorship because that was one of the issues last year. And I just want to say that this will require some discussion. We would like to keep a dual functionality, especially because, you know, just frontal presentations don't work as well. Plus, I just demonstrated to you that we have some good evidence that we can move things in parallel and actually get some real tangibles. Now, the part that was basically also derived from this meeting here, talking to drug developers, and keep in mind, these are very sophisticated people. They work with cancer every day, but it became clear that realizing the promise of just explaining digital pathology and AI or in diagnostics remains really complicated. And one of the themes we thought would be, could we use this second layer to the meeting, meaning the capturing layer, to comprehensively capture the current challenges? So it could be that we do, again, like, you know, in the last year, to do a pre-meeting survey to collect some of the topics. And then again, during the meeting, we review those and come up with a comprehensive list, or subdivide that into different groups and then have those groups be worked on during the meeting to really derive sort of a comprehensive list that can be addressed using, let's call it, regulatory science approaches. And then after the meeting, of course, that would be a resource that's available on the website, not only for those who were at the meeting, but also for others to refer back to why certain challenges exist and what this group with the various stakeholders and the various experience layers or domain experts came up with. So this is sort of the idea of, in addition to the regular, let's say, a primary function of gathering all of the stakeholders once a year, at least for those who want to join, a second topic. So this could be a survey or a comprehensive list to capture some of the challenges. And I think we've done this in one way or another in various meetings, but we haven't actually summarized it. And that was sort of an idea that we discussed at those meetings with FNIH and within the stakeholders that were shown on the last slide. So if there are other topics, or maybe let's just open it up what people think about this idea and whether, this would be something that we could accomplish, let's say, by the fall or early winter. Any initial thoughts, suggestions?
Joe, it's Amanda. I like the topic of capturing the challenges, because I think whenever we think we're uncovering or resolving, the next challenge arises, right? So I think it's something we always have to keep top of mind, and thinking about that from a regulatory science perspective is, I think, critical. So I like it. I think it's just defining what those challenges are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think at some point.
Joe, is this only around algorithm development or?
No, not at all. Also pre-analytics, staining, all those things that we've discussed. But the issue that maybe that was, sort of a planning fault or something, we never actually wrote together, let's say, I don't know if a table format or a slide format, whatever the format is, but to say here are the key challenges and how to address those. Because, just like Amanda said, a few years ago, probably half a decade ago, people thought, oh, if there would be an approved scanner, everything will unlock. That didn't happen. If there would be CPT codes, everything would just fall in place. Well, it's a little more complicated, and etc. So, but having a list of the challenges that we currently see or perceive as relevant in the field of digital pathology, CompPath, and AI would be, it sounds like a massive endeavor, but, I think we have some good workforce and a lot of experts that might be able to, putting their head together in a meeting, maybe with some preparation to capture that. Okay.
Joe,
Mhm.
what would be your timeline on this survey part? Because we are internally working on our planning for the next 3 years of our research program.
Mhm.
And even it doesn't have to be summarized, it doesn't have to be made pretty, but to start just collecting a list of some of these challenges, especially related to the regulatory process and things that could be solved with some regulatory research. I think I would really like to take some of that to the rest of the program here for consideration as we chart out our next 3 years.
I mean, that would be fantastic. I mean, if we share a prelim list, it would also be great, of course, all off the record, but it would be great to hear what the FDA thinks are the challenges, right? Because that is something that has never been compared and contrasted. And I don't know what that would look like, but I mean, I think practically speaking, timeline, I haven't proposed anything yet, but we probably need a few people to join to, let's say, form a subcommittee to help organize the annual meeting. So, I mean, of course, we look over to Tash and Noor, who will hopefully help, but the idea, the content, and all of that should probably come from the members, not from the convener. So practically speaking, someone feels motivated to join a planning subcommittee for this meeting, I think one immediate task would be to help create a survey. And it can be fairly simple, right? It's like a field that says, hey, what do you consider the 3 biggest challenges? We can send that out to our currently 633 members and hopefully get some comprehensive list back that we probably just need to sift through and count and categorize. But that shouldn't take that long. But I can put an exact time to it. Other comments on this?
Actually, I do have a comment.
Yeah.
So Brandon.
You're muted. Kim, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me without the
Yes.
feedback? Okay, great.
Yes. Mhm.
So it looks like it seems that it may be helpful for us to think about, the wins that we've had over the last few years and leap ahead to think about it backwards. What is it that we actually want, right? And then start from that in terms of capturing the challenges, because it seems that, we'll have like this laundry list, but, as we're moving, through, things from years to years, directionality changes, right? And so maybe we can think about this in terms of what are we trying to accomplish at the end of the day, that we want out and we need out like now, and how do we get to there? And what are the challenges that we have to face to get to where we need to get to? And so maybe that will help us to narrow down that list to something that's more actionable, and that's, really what maybe I think that we can think about.
I mean, one thing that comes to mind, since we are a regulatory science initiative, and I think Amanda just said that just right off the bat, and I heard it, but I didn't put it into context. But of course, there are issues that you cannot address with regulatory science means. But, given that we have a regulatory science focus, we could consider the list from a perspective of challenges that you can address through regulatory science. As an example, I mean, that would require, of course, eliminating some topics that might not be, addressable by that. But, that, I don't know, just shooting from the hip, I don't know if that addresses what you were thinking, Kim, but that would probably narrow the focus down a bit. Okay.
You're on mute again, Kim, if you were saying something.
Oh.
I don't want to be exclusionary at all. I'm just trying to think about, all the wonderful things that, I know, for example, I have a laundry list of 1,000 things. I'm trying to think of how to, narrow those things. I'm sure everyone else has as well. And just trying to try to keep it simple and focus, maybe one of those topics out of the, the 5 that we choose could be something that, could be, immediately actionable or near-term actionable. Let's think about it that way, or something of that nature.
I mean, it's also a task at a meeting to discuss, for example, how addressable is a problem, right? Like if you say, everyone should always use one standard, that's a great, let's say, demand, but whether that ever becomes reality is it's very hard to address, while other things might be a bit easier to address. But, I think we just have to draw a line to, let's say, get some data to plan the meeting, and then leave it as open as possible so that folks can contribute during the meeting, just like we did last time. I mean, those topics were fairly vague, but in the end, we had a lot of slides with a lot of content after those, like, whatever, group sessions. I thought that was really a success. Okay. So please email us, if you're interested in the FNIH meeting project, and or the planning meeting for the annual meeting. A few more updates, and hopefully there's some useful information here. So one element that I missed, and there were like 3 people that emailed it to me, and I thought it was very, very interesting, is from January 9th. This is an entry from the Office of the Secretary, HHS. So this is, parent organization of the executive branch for healthcare. And here is a topic related to interoperability and a so-called certification program for algorithm transparency and information sharing. And this is a massive document, and I think it is worth at least knowing about it. And I want to show you briefly the history and then some of these topics that are covered within this, because it illustrates a very interesting topic that I would like to discuss with this group. So last year, October, White House and the president issued an executive order which called HHS to establish healthcare-specific AI programs and policies. So not surprising, and that's important. Now, a rule that was released, and this document that I just showed you the cover of has 916 pages and is published by HHS and ONC, so that's the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology, or AKA Mickey Tripathi, and his team, of course, and they published this. Now, this so-called Health Technology Interoperability 1 final rule introduces a series of interesting concepts and specifications for certified health IT AI tools. And that rule is, again, there's like this February, Michael, I will double check. I think this is in effect. And the release is fairly specific because it changes a lot of elements, and this was published as the final rule. So there are probably on the order of 100 of individual components in there, and this is a top-level summary from a group, and I think, yes, I see Noor already pasted this in the chat, so take some time, but the concept of decision support interventions, or DSIs, replaces the clinical decision support criterion definition. Can't go into details, but you see here, this is defined in a specific section that is related to enabling a limited set of identified users to select, activate one or more electronic clinical decision support interventions, etc., etc. So I should put some dots here. So this document in very detailed elements define source attributes. To make this a little more concrete, for example, it updates to a specific set of LOINC codes, or it defines attributes of race, sex, gender, etc. It also defines intervention risk management practices and aligns at the same time the FDA oversight of AI/ML with the applicable sections in the federal code. The complicated part here, if you want to see the multiple streams, on the one hand, let's call it for medical devices or diagnosticians, there is the software as a medical device and AI and ML enabled devices rules, but there are a lot of additional AI tools that enter the medical practice that are not intuitively immediately FDA oversight, and this entire document specifies some of this and achieves, or hopefully will achieve, alignment. That's why it's so complicated, that's why it's so long. It's very hard to summarize this, so please take a look, but some of the elements as an example, and this is the safe, secure, and trustworthy use and purchase and use of AI in healthcare includes, for example, criteria that are referred to as FAVES, which stands as an acronym for these elements here. They all make intuitive sense, but they're defined in this document. And there's additional health sector AI commitment documents, fairly concise actually, but they're cross-referenced. So why I wanted to share this is as let's call it digital pathology, computational pathology, and innovators in the field are working towards interoperability, there's basically a parallel case, and you see here some of the table of contents that are directly related to the standards, the interoperability modalities, and the software specifications that we need to accomplish this, while at the same time accounting for these more overarching health data principles. So a pointer to a massive document that we will probably all need to coordinate and or work with. Next step is an MDIC update. I don't know, can I hand this over to you, Noor?
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. And we would like to share about 2 upcoming events that MDIC is having. Both are going to be in Maryland. I apologize for the email that just came in. It'll be April 16th and 17th. The events are happening simultaneously One is FDA co-sponsored, which is the next slide over, if you don't mind flipping back, Joe. And this one is an FDA MDIC symposium on computational modeling and simulation. And both events are exchangeable basically. So if you would like to join one part of the MDRC MXR conference and then would like to join in on the symposium, please feel free to register for only one, and then you are able to switch between the two events because they are happening at the same time. And I will be dropping the links for both registration pages into the chat shortly. And lastly, if you don't mind, Joe, switching to the next slide.
Mhm.
MDRC has released a Case for Equality program, and it's a resource for improving CAPA processes at Elixir Medical, and this was a really big deal for MDRC, and we are excited for all the new programs that MDRC is working on. And that's it. Thank you, Joe, for dropping that into the chat.
Wonderful. Yeah, maybe you can drop the other links. That wasn't quite as fast, but no, I think especially, you know, computational modeling and simulation, I think that's very helpful, and there's a lot of important content there. So the content is, I think, already on the website. Quick update from one of the professional societies that's working with us. There was just a few days ago a CPT code in the anatomic pathology laboratory. And you see here a group of absolute gurus in the field of digital pathology. And I thought was really refreshing, and the content is available. You see the links are down here. So the entire webinar is recorded, and the whole PowerPoint presentations. It went really into the details on how the category 3 codes are implemented, for example, into the LIMS system and how these are submitted. This was something that I believe the field has been waiting for a while, and you know, it's fantastic that these experts as well as the college has provided these tools. And now, while that is not necessarily regulatory science, it is something that has to be done correctly, and it's part and parcel of, you know, moving the field forward. So I thought I just wanted to share this. Few other updates. So the WHO has released a few tools that I grouped here into this section. Quickly, one of the key elements in terms of transforming economies and some of the imbalances that are existing has been addressed. So one of the publications from last year, we haven't ever presented this, but it's somewhat related to some of the solutions that we present here, is actually done. The council here is chaired by Professor Mariana Mazzucato, and this is a fantastic resource in terms of like how to address some of these disparities. Now I want to show you a few elements that derived. So this was a final report, and that resulted in some recent developments, and I put that under diversity, equity, inclusion because they address some of this. So one of the reports is from February 1, the mounting need for services that address some of these growing global cancer burdens that are happening, especially in second and third world countries. And one of the big issues here is how to address this without having, you know, a lot of the data available. So in terms of from this website here, which I believe Noor might paste, you can get to a data visualization tool, and it's not a tool, it's actually multiple tools. For example, geographic disparities in terms of cancer incidence or prevalence can be mapped directly to a world or a regional map. That level of transparency in terms of cancer distribution is, you know, has been missing and is now available. And you see there's also other analytical tools that are all interactive that you can use, and you know, at least as a first step to address some of these challenges. The other part, which comes back full circle, is a publication by this group. It's actually a much larger group, but this is abbreviated, which is a review. And now this is a mouthful, but where racial and ethnic representation of participants in pediatric clinical trials were analyzed through oncology drug approvals in terms of written requests to the FDA. And one of the interesting things, as I'm sure you remember, we discussed this here, is that this is one of the key elements that should and has to be addressed now, which is one of the strategic aims of the FDA in terms of like accounting for underrepresented minorities or, you know, other subsets of racial and ethnic subgroups. And this study, which just came out a bit earlier this year, identified that representation of participants of minority groups is in fact the case and represents the racial distribution of childhood cancers, but there was an issue that typically Hispanic participants appear to be underrepresented, immediately implying a certain goal and or focus area. This is one of the key research topics, of course, that is supposed to be and or addressed. So if you want to take a look, that's, I believe, a very important and a helpful study that illustrates what and how to analyze this. I'm not aware of any studies that have addressed this related to or summarized this related to devices, just pointing this out. Next topic, update from our patient advocacy group, and it is definitely always worth looking into some of the events that Friends of Cancer Research, which is one of our patient advocacy groups with a strong interest in regulatory science, has up. And there are three that I wanted to point out here. So first, there was a large meeting in DC in person, the future of diagnostic tests, new data and modern policy. As two quick pointers, Jeff Shuren gave an overview over the entire work of CDRH. I don't know how he did it, but he somehow covered really a lot of different elements in a very short presentation. All of this is recorded and available. The key element here is that he specifically pointed out the Pathology Innovation Collaborative community as one of the collaborative efforts by CDRH, which is, of course, a great thing to get a shout out like this. Second, there were multiple panel discussions. Here, for example, you see Brandon in discussion about, you know, some of the elements that are really critical in moving digital pathology forward. A second event related to what we just discussed, the enhancement or enhancing of diversity in clinical trials, and also the implementation of diversity plans or so-called diversity plans, was also a great event. It was 1.5 hours. The meeting, as well as the meeting discussion document, is available publicly. And just quick pointer there. And one element you see here up the advancing real-world data to generate regulatory-grade real-world evidence in oncology. You can find that from the landing page. So this just happened. So the information and material will appear soon. And I think today, I'm not sure if Brittany had time to join, but thanks for the update. And I just wanted to point to this real quick. In terms of resources, and now this is the session where I have to speed up slightly to ensure that we cover some of the topics. It's really impressive, all the different things that wash ashore with us. So first of all, as you know, digital pathology is, at least to some, following the footsteps of radiology. There's a lot of differences. We can't, at least for now, not get rid of the film, but this is a website written by David Abrin from UCSF, which gives a fantastic overview over what's called the demise of film in radiology. I have never seen this page, but it's maintained. You see, it's originally from 2014, but several people emailed this. I don't know, it must have shown up somewhere, but in terms of like what might happen to or within pathology, which I thought was a great pointer. The second element, you may have seen this was a comment, Nature, I think we have it on the website later. This is an interesting approach to say, do we really need to name cancers when they're systemic or cancers of unknown primary if we know what the alterations are? There's an interesting sort of timeline here related to BRCA or homologous recombination deficient tumors, where an estimate was that between 2014, where a certain drug was approved in a certain cancer, that the estimated number of patients with breast cancer that might have benefited from treatment may have died in that time. So this type of analysis, which you could consider a lives lost analysis, is then continued, and you see that this surmounts over a very short time frame to, multiple hundred thousands of people, and diagnostic delays or implementation delays might be something like this. Why I wanted to show you that is read the paper and think about it, what this timeline will look like when we look back in hopefully 5 years, why digital pathology hasn't been implemented earlier. Now, that's a controversial statement, and I mean it motivational, not to say anything else, but if you imagine what this timeline already looks like over decades related to digital pathology, I think we might actually have a bigger problem on our hand. But great summary, and congrats to the authors for raising this very important point. One publication from MDIC, so Noor Jitesh, congrats, is a very interesting paper related to reimbursement strategies for digital therapeutics. Can't go into details. It's a very long document with many interesting aspects here related to pain or pain reduction, virtual reality therapies, and how to actually demonstrate the value add. Again, just a quick pointer. The next document was sent to us by the AMA, which is recently released. It's a research collaboration where a big survey was conducted. I forgot the total number of physicians, but the AMA does this quite frequently, illustrating the emerging landscape of augmented intelligence in healthcare. And one of the things is, what are the current use cases across specialties? And when looking at this, you see progress notes, translation services. So these are all sort of chatbot, large language models use cases, but 62%, none of the above. So it's highly diversified, and trying to apply these augmented intelligence tools for fairly, let's call it mundane or administrative jobs predominantly, but there is also assistive diagnosis and other elements. A few more resources. One is this excellent paper illustrating the so-called National Clinical Trials Network. I'm sure you've heard about it, but I particularly found this illustration informative to understand what a site participant is facing when participating in those trials, because there are different entry points. You may have heard some of these names, and this paper is illustrating basically a multi-decade experience with this trial or National Clinical Trial Network infrastructure. This was also related to the WHO element that I mentioned earlier, and there's a first World Global Clinical Trials Forum that happened towards the end of last year, and this is a summary of what was done there. This was published towards the end of last year, but we didn't present it in December. Another resource that is very interesting related to interoperability, and we come back to basically the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology, is this document, which is an interoperability document from end of last year. There is a framework called TEFCA, which is primarily applicable to health information technology providers, in particular electronic health records, and a certain I would call it certification of those software that basically illustrates how participants or sub-participants in this framework can interact and achieve interoperability. Now, this framework is pretty new, visionary, and it's in effect now. And we had a chance in October to have a conversation with Mickey Tripathi. So this is photo from a panel discussion. And there is a summary diagram of what Mickey Tripathi is sort of planning in terms of an open ecosystem architecture, and what sort of the overall digital foundation for interoperability in the US would look like. So if you haven't seen this, please take a look at this summary. A few other resources. One is from AHRQ, which is, of course, the Agency for Research and Quality. A difficult topic, and they put together a diagnostic safety update, a brief. And this is, again, from January 2024, so just released. And you see some of the folks that care deeply about quality that put together sort of a research practice and policy guide. Several people have sent us the so-called Hiroshima Process and International Code of Conduct for AI Systems, which sets ethical principles. Great documents, very short and concise. Please take a look. And then related to what we discussed earlier in terms of the quality management systems, the IQCP, or Individual Quality Control Plan document, has been released jointly by CDC and CMS, including certain papers around this guideline and helpful tools for the laboratory. For example, here the paper by Linda Bruno. In terms of one other resource, Cybersecurity Working Group, which is a large consortium of people that examine industry trends. Here is a strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan regarding health industry cybersecurity. So as you know, interoperability is the positive mode on how systems can interact, when in reality that also imparts a potential risk in terms of, privacy breaches, etc. So what this document does is fairly interesting. They observe and rank industry trends in terms of how much or of this should be implemented, in terms of strong recommendations, weak recommendations, or it's, again, a strategic plan. So non-binding, but highly informative. So if you want to take a look at this, it would be great. Now, as you can see, we have only a few minutes left, and there are many, many publications here. And I will just point out a few, and they're sorted in by no means in terms of like priority, but I definitely want to point to a few, and I leave you with some of these. I just want to quickly go through. Fantastic summary of combined DNA RNA sequencing for germline testing. A phenomenal tool for pathologist level cell annotation. You see here a ground truth versus a prediction from the group around Faisal Mahmoud. Not too long ago, I think, actually earlier in February, a few days ago, the All of Us data set, including a big research workbench and the available data sets, has been released. I think we have one of the authors here on the call as well, which is this paper here. Stephen Yip, brief shout out, a diffusion probabilistic model for the creation of synthetic histopathology images. Another paper here about immune checkpoint blockade. So keep in mind, this is not the tumor, this is the clonality of the immune response. Fantastic elements, cancer-associated fibroblasts, etc. Want to give you like 2 or 3 additional pointers to some of these elements, another annotation tool. But the 2 or 3 things that might be very interesting to this group is this paper from Mayo Clinic, Hamad Qureshi from the Rafferty group, which is saying, here's some of the challenges and implementations of pathology. You see here are all scanners and the supported formats, as well as an overview of the whole slide image viewers. Might be a great starting point. And another editorial related to this, what a great time to be alive, pointing to the digital and computational pathology revolution that we're witnessing right now. Again, focus on a few things. This is one of the very interesting cell-free transcriptome. So keep in mind, cfDNA is more stable than cfRNA, but this paper sort of explains or starts discussing that. Fantastic paper in Radiology, which compared 17 different AI algorithms against human performance. And you see only 4 AI algorithms for detecting lung nodules in this case improved the performance, whereas the others showed no evidence of a difference in performance. I thought not pointing this out to say that what the performance improvement is, but just to say that the study design was actually quite interesting. This is also a great paper, so please take a look. This is Thomas Sabaj and Jonathan Chen. It's a brief communication about the potential for large language models, and they go through the so-called chain of thought when illustrating how a large language model reaches a diagnosis and what type of traditional chain of thought or analytical reasoning chain of thought is applied. Fantastic work. I just skip over a few. There's a fantastic challenges and recommendations regarding machine learning in genomics, and several other papers. Let me just point 2 or 3 out that might be extremely helpful for this group. This paper here illustrates the healthcare industry and the rising emergence of platform ecosystems and how they should interact. And I wanted to definitely show you one other important paper. I'll just go through real quick. This is a Ki-67 improvement. So this is the error goes down when using AI. A great way to illustrate this. Great summary of Daniel Bongard around the Data for Health initiative and integrity. This is a fantastic losing images in digital radiology. I haven't seen any papers on this topic in pathology, but you see, for example, DICOM access to the scanner is mentioned as one of the features. And the final paper I want to show is this nationwide network of health AI assurance laboratories proposing a way to regulate the risk and safety of AI tools in clinical practice. And this is what a potential example report could look like. In the interest of time, I will end it. Thank you, and I hope to see you again at the end of March. And with that, thank you so much and talk soon. And please keep sending this. I believe many people write me a lot of comments that it's great resources. Thank you very much and hope to talk and see you soon.